What are the ramifications of President Trump's and the U.S. national security establishment's abduction and rendition of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro? Join Richard Ebeling and me in this week's Libertarian Angle as we examine that question. Hi, I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Welcome to this week's Libertarian Angle and the first Libertarian Angle for the new year. Happy New Year to all y'all. Thank you very much for your great support of FFF. We're very appreciative and we're very excited to be here with another year of Libertarian Angle. I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Ebeling. Richard, Happy New Year to you and good to see you again.
Happy New Year to you, to our viewers and listeners, for a year that hopefully will be a little bit brighter and positive for the cause of freedom than this past one has been.
Yeah, we can always hope, but boy, Richard, it sure doesn't look like it's starting out on a great footing, at least from a libertarian standpoint. So the obvious issue that's going on is Venezuela. And so let me just put things here in context. I'm sure everybody's aware of what's going on, but there's so many interesting dimensions to this that some of them are just quite befuddling, some are mysterious, some make sense. But so here Trump amasses this massive military armada starting, I think it was last summer or so. And I said that this was, I wrote an article saying, be prepared for foreign policy crisis before any of this even got started. And the reason I said that is because there was a revolution afoot among the MAGA people against Trump on the Epstein documents. And I remembered that quote that James Madison said, talking about the Roman emperors, that whenever there was a revolution afoot among the Roman citizenry over inflation or taxation and stuff, they would just incite a foreign war. And everybody would immediately forget their rebellion and rally around the flag. And I said, this same thing's going to happen. And sure enough, where there was no crisis at all of a sudden, this massive crisis. And he starts killing people, ordering the military to kill these people in these boats who were suspected of transporting drugs. I don't see how that's a violation of U.S. law, but they said it was. But just executing them, assassinating them with no trial, no anything. I mean, our criminal justice system, has always been based on when you've got a criminal offense, you arrest a person, you give them a trial, and not here though. Boy, they just were killing people. I forget what the number is, up to about 100 or so. But everybody understood that Trump had put himself in a position where he was going to have to do something about Maduro. And sure enough, so he goes in the last couple of weeks, the military does, and in this raid where they capture Maduro. They kill, I don't know, 70, 80 people there that were guarding him. I'm still shocked that they didn't kill Maduro. I mean, I'm just like stunned. Why would they let him live? I mean, they've killed all these boat people and stuff, but now they bring him back to trial, to stand trial for drug violations and weapons violations, which I find very strange too. Is why do America's gun control laws apply in Venezuela? But I don't understand that. But everybody assumed, Richard, that this was going to be your classic regime change operation, including me. I thought, sure, they're going to go in there, and I mean, clearly Maduro's an illegitimate president. Clearly he lost that national election, but he's staying in power simply because he controls the military. And the military's loyal to him. And so when the protests started, they started rounding people up. Typical tyrannical brutality and torturing people and so forth. So everybody assumed that Trump was going to just, clean out that regime and put in the dissidents, either the guy that won the election or the leader of the opposition, Maria Corina Machado. He didn't do that. Instead, he's left the regime in place. And he's even insulted Machado, saying that she doesn't have the respect of the opposition. I mean, my gosh, if anybody's got respect, it's her. But subject to her latest actions, I think she may have lost a lot of respect based on her what appears to be very sycophantic support of Trump. And I'm sure she was stunned by this too, that she thought this was going to be a regime change operation. I'm sure of it. Her supporters thought. So you have this spectacle of where around the world, the Venezuelan immigrants who've had to flee the country to save their lives from starvation and stuff, because they've been under US sanctions and the socialism, they've been celebrating, but nobody's celebrating in Venezuela because the crackdown's gotten worse since Maduro was removed. They have checkpoints. They have warrantless searches. They're searching people's phones. They've got masked agents that are roaming the streets, stopping people. I mean, I keep telling Americans, if you want to see what's happening in America, study a totalitarian regime because they're doing the same thing. They may be copying the United States with their masked agents and their searches, warrantless searches, and so forth. But the crackdown's even more fierce. And Trump is saying he is supporting the interim president, who was the vice president, who wasn't elected to anything. She was appointed by Maduro vice president. Her brother's head of the National Assembly. So she's now in charge. She's done this crackdown. And in the meantime, Trump is saying, well, she's going to follow my orders or else I will do something worse to her than I did to Maduro. Well, what's worse than what he's done to Maduro? It seems to me that the only thing worse is killing her. I mean, I find it hard to believe that he's threatening her with assassination. But in the meantime, Trump is saying they're going to sell their oil to us, the United States, and I'm going to control the money, he says. And if she doesn't, she's in a world of trouble. I mean, I get sometimes when I'm looking at all this, I'm saying, God, this is like the mafia, how the mafia operated. Well, let me give you an offer you can't refuse. But Richard, when you put all these dynamics together, okay, I'm not a predictor. I know I can't predict the future, but I think you got a tinderbox here. I think it's not like somebody just died in office like the president. This is an act of extreme violence that removed him with deaths of 80, 90 people or so that were around him. And now you've got the elevation of this woman and you've got this extraction of oil. Then you've got this piracy where Trump's people are seizing oil vessels in the high seas and they're continuing the sanctions that are creating this horrible economic crisis, which is going to cause more refugees, more immigrants. And then you've got the military involved here. To me, this is a potentially very explosive thing with a lot of moving parts. Now, Maduro was probably very good at holding all this together. I mean, a tyrant has talent in terms of holding all these kind of moving pieces together. I'm not convinced that she has that same ability. And I would not be surprised at all if this thing explodes in one form or fashion in some acts of extreme violence. What do you think about the situation?
Well, to begin with, I'm not surprised that they did all in their power to capture Maduro rather than assassinate him. I understand that precisely because they had some inside informer or informers that enabled them to have a created blueprint of the site in which Maduro was residing and hiding for them to know exactly how to plan his apprehension. They knew he had a safe room. And I understand that they had come with blow torches and other devices to get through the steel safe room door if he had successfully gotten into it and been able to close the door, which he was not able to do. That's how they were able to get in and grab him so easily. Why? Well, he's like the trophy, the conqueror's trophy. The head of the opposing regime is paraded through the streets in triumph and then brought on trial to be executed, or in this case, probably put into prison for life. But this is the idea. The emperor brings the opposing king as his trophy. See what power I have, what control I have. I've put him into the dust at my feet. So I'm not surprised that Trump has acted this way and it wanted it this way. But no, more generally, a lot of people have just not understood, why does Trump do these things? And I'm focusing uh, primarily on these foreign affair matters, but his general outlook on life. And the fact is, while he may not have an articulated vision in his mind, since he never seems to read anything serious, but the fact is, he is a caricature of a 21st century mercantilist. He's like the kings of the 1600s and the 1700s, like the king of Spain or the king of France, who had the philosophy that this kingdom is something I own. And I use it to serve my purposes, my aggrandizement, my wealth enhancement, my sense of power and ego. Because what does Trump do? He tells businessmen where to invest. He threatens them if they don't turn over shares in their companies so he can be assured that they use their wealth the way he wants. He controls, as the mercantilists of the 16 and 1700s did, not just domestic production, but imports and exports. And everything is a presumption of a zero-sum game. If another country wins, then the United States must lose. And if the United States win, it's because other countries are bent down and are the losers to America's gain. And as the mercantilists believe, it's not the world is a world of conflicting great powers, and they're constantly in competition for power, military capacity, and authority because wars are inevitable, conflicts are inevitable, challenges are inevitable. And one of the elements in the mercantilist philosophy of the 16 and 1700s is that it's not enough just to do this in your own home country. You have to have a satellite of colonies, subservient countries around you that you control for access to resources and outlets for the markets of your goods. Why does he want Venezuela? It's going to be our oil. Oil is the 21st century equivalent in his mind of gold, right? The mercantilist, like what you needed to always have was a net gain of gold when you traded with countries. Oil is power, it's energy. It makes the new Trump class Navy going to be powerful to sail the seas. It's why he needs Greenland. That's a base to ward off the conflicting powers in the great struggle of the world and the resources that they have that we can use for our purposes. This is the entire mindset in which he operates. I'm the king. All that is in my territory belongs to me. Now, in his philosophy, he says, well, I've been elected by the people. I had the biggest popular vote. I had the electoral vote. I had two houses of Congress. The people, I am the king who serves the people's will. I am the people. And therefore, what I do with the country is, in fact, in the interest of the people. And anyone who disagrees with what I want is, in fact, calling for the demise of America because I am America. This is the basis of his attitude about Venezuela. He doesn't care about democracy. Now, democracy is a bandied about word. The left uses it one way, the conservatives use it another, and classical liberals have a more narrow definition that a constitution in a democracy is meant to secure people's liberty. People have a right to elect those who will enforce the laws, but the laws are to be restricted through a constitution to secure people's freedoms and not violate them. He doesn't care about any of this. All he wants is the ability to control resources, financial and resource wealth. So this is his attitude toward Venezuela. Why doesn't he want that woman who won the Nobel Prize? She's too weak. She's not going to be able to keep the guns in control. So I get my flow of oil. I don't see that the oil companies can reinvest there and see that their wealth flows back here to make us great, economically strong, because we have our hemisphere, my new Monroe Doctrine. It's mine. It's mine because I am America. So he's not concerned with democracy. He doesn't care about the liberty of the Venezuelan people. He's interested in having people in authority there who will be subservient and follow his goals and purposes as minions, as subservient local rulers who will serve the emperor who resides in Washington, D.C. So if they're communists, if they're socialists, as long as they play nicely in the Trump sandbox, well, that's okay. He respects power. And that's why he likes Putin. That's why he likes Xi Jinping. That's why he likes Kim Jong-un. He likes power, men of great power who have the authority to do everything that they want. He wants people in power in Venezuela who don't care about liberty, but who will keep things in line, calm, stable, so that the system works in behalf of Trump's mercantilism. So if the people are thrown a bone of some freedom, some civil liberties, nominally electing people more freely to a representative assembly, that's fine. That's bread and circuses for the masses, but that's not what guides him. He's the crudest and the rudest materialist in the sense of material wealth is power, material wealth is authority, material wealth gives you ability to ward off the enemies. Now, just let me make one other observation about this. There is nothing more in opposition to the classical liberal or libertarian philosophy and view of human society than this Trumpian vision of the world. From the beginning of modern classical liberalism in the 1700s and the 1800s, the idea is that there are no inherent antagonisms in the relationships among people. It is politics that causes antagonisms. If we leave people free in that system of Adam Smith's system of natural liberty, you don't kill, you don't steal, and you don't defraud. And people must associate on the basis of free, voluntary exchange in which they get others to give them what you want that they have by giving them something in return. It's a positive sum game. Self-interest is harnessed to serve the better improvements of all in society, as each improves their own circumstances by bettering others in the network of division of labor, the global division of labor, where government is a securer of rights so men can be free to use their minds, their creative abilities, the resources that they own in productive ways through peaceful and innovative and wealth-generating exchange. That is a different world concept than he has. All he sees is power and force. And that's what he thinks is strength. He's about to spend, this is the new thing. He wants to increase the new defense budget to $1.5 trillion.
Yeah.
That was just announced. 1.5 trillion. The biggest navy, a Trump-sized navy, a Trump-sized Air Force, a Trump-sized Space Force. We're going to be on Mars. It'll be ours. That is his mindset, and that is what is behind all of this. It's the most statist, collectivist, anti-freedom view of government, society, and man that you can imagine. There's only one thing worse than it, and is its equal, and that is the crudest and the rudest form of Marxian totalitarianism, who crushes the individual in the name of the people. Trump crushes everything in the name of national greatness, where the king, the head of state, is the guider of all and to which all must be subservient.
I think your analysis about the mercantilist aspect is absolutely exquisite. I mean, I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. He sees these countries as the head of an empire would see colonies. I mean, there was the old British Empire and the Spanish Empire in the 19th century, that's what the British colonies in America were all about. Those were the colonies, and they provided under this concept of mercantilism the natural resources that would be then taken back to the home country that would use them to produce the final products. And so there was this concept of exploitation. They would take over these colonies in order to extract the minerals and so forth. That's really his mindset. Isn't that what you're saying? That when
Yes.
he's looking at Venezuela as like a colony and that belongs to America in the Western Hemisphere.
Well, notice that thing that he had on one of his sites. He said the Western Hemisphere is ours. The Western Hemisphere is ours. It's a possession of America, and he's the head of America. He's the emperor of America. That is how he views it.
Yeah, yeah.
And your point, and I meant to mention, but I didn't bring it through. That is what we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence this year. What were the American colonists, among a variety of other things, rebelling against? Well, as I've mentioned before, when we've talked about the Declaration, once we get beyond the famous lines that we all know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are created to secure these freedoms, not to violate them, etc. When you get to the enumerated grievances, which is the body of the text of this long one-page declaration, most of them are on economics. They're not allowed to trade among themselves. They can't trade freely with the rest of the world. They're taxed. They're directed in how they can use their labor and resources. They're rebelling against the very British mercantilist system that Trump now wishes to impose on everybody else. He's the exact opposite of what the Americans were rebelling against and wanted to free themselves and in principle free the world from.
Yeah, that's fascinating. His mindset is the mindset of King George. I mean, that is his mindset. But Richard, think of it in terms of the Venezuelan people, the regular people that are sick and tired of this Hugo Chavez, Nicolás Maduro regime, this Chavistas thing. They know it's been a disaster economically. Now, there's the sanctions too that are a major factor that have contributed to the economic chaos, which is one of the reasons I think Machado has lost respect because she was supporting the sanctions. Sanctions are a war against the civilian population as a way to secure regime change. You know, the idea is the ruler will feel so bad that his people are suffering so bad he'll renounce power and leave. Well, that never works. Instead, it was 8 million Venezuelans who left. But nonetheless, Richard, those people that voted for this opponent of Maduro, I forget what his name is, but he's now in Spain for fear of being arrested. Uh, those people that voted for him, and from what I can gather, it was about 80% of the country. He won this with a like 80 to 20% vote against Maduro. Those people had to have really had a lot of faith in Trump and the US government. When they saw that armada forming, they knew this was it, man. That they were going to finally get their dreams. Now, you and I would oppose this based on just the traditional principles of America. John Quincy Adams, America doesn't go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. This is a job for Venezuelans. And sometimes that job takes a long time. It's difficult to oust a tyrannical regime. Jefferson even points it out in the Declaration that people will put up with a lot of tyranny because the cost of a revolution can be very high, and there's no guarantees. But Richard, what are those people thinking today? They clearly had their hopes up that this was it. There was no way the Venezuelan military is going to be able to stand up to the U.S. military. And I said they would surrender immediately. And so they were never put in that position because Trump just grabs Maduro, takes him over to New York, leaves this regime in place. And as far as Trump's concerned, I don't think he has any problems with this crackdown. That's maintaining order for him. All that matters at this point is stability and oil. He gets this oil that he wants to control, which I mean, like, what about the Constitution where Congress has the power of the purse and the distribution, the expenditure of money? Oh, no. This is his money. It's like a gigantic slush fund coming out of Venezuela. what do the average Venezuelans think now? I mean, they have to be thinking of betrayal, that this is horrendous, that the United States is supporting tyranny, that the United States is opposing a new election. I mean, that's why I think there's a tinderbox here that people are going to react in some way here that I think none of us can predict. I mean, we've seen the outcome of foreign interventions in the past, and sometimes it's a while before the outcome manifests itself. Like in Guatemala in '54, the CIA ousted the Democratic elected president Jacobo Arbenz. It was, I think, at least a few years before the Civil War finally breaks out. But the Civil War lasts more than 10 years and kills a million people. Or Iran, 53. They oust the Democratic elected, the CIA ousts the Democratic elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, installs the brutal tyranny of the Shah, okay, which lasts till what, 1979 or so. And then you get this explosion in 79 with this tyrannical regime that's still a problem for the United States today. So we don't know how this thing pans out, but my feeling is we may see an explosion sooner rather than later.
Well, I think that, conservatives in the United States who are in the Trump camp who have been hailing this. The communist dictator has been overthrown. The communist threat and virus in South America is being eradicated by getting rid of Maduro. The fact is that this plays into the left. Is this not an example of America's hypocrisy? America talks about freedom and democracy. America talks about the self-determination. Here is the Yankee imperialist. Here is the Yankee exploiter who just wants to extract our resources and bleed us dry. And then how does this play into? That's the Marxist complaint of capitalism. It's a system of exploitation and imperialism. It's going to play into the leftist ideological playbook. It's going to have that because people feeling betrayed and viewing America as hypocritical and merely just another plunderer, then the socialists must be right. There's no other path than socialism. Now, if this sounds absurd, now I watch Russian news. I'm able to still get it on my television, RT. And I've been watching this every day for a variety of reasons, understanding, Putin's view of the war in Ukraine, but now all of this as well. So who do they interview, right? Who do they have a reporter in Venezuela, in Caracas, okay? And he's doing these daily things. Uh, and he's one of their major reporters. He's a propagandist who was reporting on the Ukraine war for a long time. He's talking to the people on the street, of course, selected people on the street. Yes, this is showing that this is imperialism at work. The colonialists are trying to take us over again. We must protect our socialist revolution. There is no answer except socialism. See, this is all playing into the Marxist playbook because of America not being a bastion and a voice and a beacon of liberty, but basically a mercantilist exploiter who wants to plunder people with no regard for their freedom or dignity.
Yeah, well, let me. I was going to say I was laughing when you were talking about oil, and this is the black gold, for
Oh,
Trump. I mean,
yes.
but let me talk about this New York proceeding, because that's kind of interesting too. That the Supreme Court has held that Trump's effectively immune from everything he does, as long as he can tie it in with his job, which is very easy to do. So he can't be held responsible for any of these killings in the high seas, and the same applies to the national security establishment. The Supreme Court has said they're never going to get involved with second guessing them. Uh, but Maduro is clearly going to show up at trial at court, at federal court there, and say, "I'm immune too." And how are they going to handle that? That the the president of a colony doesn't have the same immunity as the president of the empire. His immunity is subject to the drug laws of the United States or the gun laws of the United States. And let me give you another practical aspect of this. The reason why they picked up his wife too, because this is a standard trick among federal officials, is that you pick up a guy's wife and you charge her too, so that you can get a guilty plea from the husband. That you don't have to go through the hassle of proving him guilty in a court of law. You say, we will offer you 10 years in jail and the prospect of a pardon. Don't forget that ex-president of Honduras got pardoned. Yeah, we're big drug warriors. We're killing people in the high seas, but we let this guy off after you got convicted of smuggling some 100 tons or something of cocaine. Uh, and they're going to tell him, if you plead out, we'll let your wife go free. But if you don't plead out and you go to trial, we're going to do our best to get her into prison as well. What's a guy going to do, Richard? He's faced with that kind of choice. A lot of
Well, I
men
don't know
will
if he's
say,
going to
I'll
do
let
that
my wife go free.
because because when he appeared in court the other day, he already said that he's the president of he's still the president of Venezuela, that he's a prisoner of war, that that he's not guilty of this. Now, of course, the U.S. government replies, he's not the president of Venezuela. He stole the election. He's a criminal, and it was merely a police action, not the U.S. military. It was merely a police action to bring someone who's been indicted to a court of law. I mean, that's a position that the prosecution will take, and the problem is nobody's going to question that. Nobody's going to question that because aren't bad guys supposed to go to jail? And well, I mean, would you want to invite Maduro to dinner to your house? Of course not.
But see, I agree with you, except they're going to throw in their face that when they were killing these guys in those boats, defenseless guys. I mean, there's never been any evidence that those people were armed. And the obviously the right thing would have been would to be approach the boat, demand the surrender, take him into custody, charge him whatever, bring him for trial. That's what the Coast Guard would do. But instead, they just killed him. And then there was that double tap, which is a strange expression, where they killed the survivors of this thing. Well, what was Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War's response? This is war. It's the fog of war. So they were using war as a way to justify these killings.
In fact,
So,
the problem is that there are rules of war, and rules of war obligates you not to do that double tap. If the enemy has been uh, put in the position of being, a survivor in the water like that, they're no longer an armed threat, and you're not supposed to shoot them. That is against the international rules of war,
yeah,
of which the United States is a member.
but my point is that Maduro, they're saying, Maduro, this is not a war, this is a criminal justice action.
Right.
While over here they're saying, oh yeah, it's a war. We can go ahead and kill anybody we want. But it's going to get mired down that trial. I read somewhere that it's not that the judge who's 92 years old.
Yes.
I mean, talk about falling asleep during the trial, and he's scheduled the first hearing in the case for March.
Yes.
And they said that the trial won't be for another year. I mean,
Yes.
so much for the speedy trial provisions of the Constitution. So they're just going to keep him languishing in that horrible prison in New York
Right.
City indefinitely, really. They'll keep delaying the trial. They won't bring him to trial. Uh, if I were Maduro, I'd take the position that the Chicago Eight took, where they just showed no respect at all for the whole process. That they believed it was a sham proceeding, and so they treated it as a sham proceeding. These federal courts have no more business involving themselves with these military antics than anybody else in Congress or whatever. And the courts are now going to be made an instrument of this charade that has taken place in Venezuela.
Well, and that's just a way to intimidate, as Trump has been saying already very publicly, the same fate could wait the president of neighboring Colombia.
Yeah.
Or as you were saying at the beginning, if this woman who now has taken over the presidency in Venezuela doesn't toe the Trump line, she could face Maduro's fate or worse, which means we're not going to kidnap you and bring you over here. We'll just kill you. And he's threatened to do that with Cuba, with Nicaragua. I mean, it's all the way of it's like the protection racket who beats up one of the people they expect money from to set an example for everyone else in the neighborhood to just fall into line.
Yeah. Well, there's Greenland. Don't forget Greenland here now.
Greenland.
I mean, we live in a country where we're talking about taking over countries through force of arms,
Oh,
weak
yes.
countries. Did you ever think you'd live in that kind of country?
Well,
Uh,
today Greenland, tomorrow Canada, and then Trump has the entire North America.
but I thought we were just talking yesterday about Russia and its aggression to take over all of Europe. Uh,
Well, since Trump insists that the United States has to have Greenland for our national security, it's essential to the country's survival. What if Putin would say, you know what? We really need to have Alaska back for legitimate Russian security. And you got it such a low on-market price. And you're always threatening us. That's the only way we can be secure. Well, how does Trump reply to that?
Now, let me tell you what the big mistake Putin made. The big mistake Putin made before he invaded Ukraine was not accusing Zelensky of being a narco terrorist. If all he had to do was get an indictment out of the Russian system against Zelensky, and there would have been no problem with his invasion of Ukraine to capture what's his name, Zelensky, as a narco terrorist.
It might very well have worked that way. But well, you see, what Trump needs to do is, just declare every one of his enemies a narco terrorist. I mean, isn't that what they've done with this poor innocent woman who got killed in Minnesota today?
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's
She's
driving her car,
yeah.
and they say, "Oh, she's a terrorist act. She was getting out of the way with an ICE agent in the vicinity of her, so you just kill her." And by the way, she's an American. She's an American.
Yeah, it's really funny to see them claiming self-defense when there's a video. I mean, I watched the video. There is
I
no
watched it several
self-defense here.
times.
There is no self-defense here.
Correct.
I mean, it's just firing at this woman. I said, wow, that's the same type of thing that must be happening in Venezuela too. One final point, Richard. What do you think about? We've talked about this with respect to Mexico, but what do you think about just making Venezuela the 51st state? I mean, we've talked about making Canada the 51st state. Wouldn't that solve a lot of problems here? Well, Trump could control the state just like he controls all the other states. He could send in the National Guard and all that. There'd be no more illegal immigrant problem. They'd all be Americans. Well, it'd be like Alaska. Okay, it's not joined to the United States, but it'd be ours. All the oil would be ours at that point. What do you
Yeah,
think?
the advantage of treating Venezuela like Greenland is that's a territory, but you don't have to give them the vote.
Ah, so you just control them as a colony, but like Puerto Rico. No, Puerto Ricans, do they have a right to vote? Can't
No,
remember. No.
I don't think they vote. They can if they're in the United States, but I don't believe they vote if they're in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
But
Uh,
it's sort of like when the Philippines was in American territory.
uh-huh.
They didn't get to vote in American elections.
Right, right. So that's the I guess the key to this is just make it a formal colony of the United States, just
Exactly, a
absorbed into the
territory.
empire. The
Right, a
territory, yeah.
territory.
Yeah. All right, on that note, we'll wrap things up. Richard, as always, enjoyed the conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks again for your support of FFF. And Richard, I look forward to talking to you again next week.
Until next time.